You're listening to Heroes in the Moment.
What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
Today, Thor, Love and Thunder.
The movie review.
Woo! We're back at it. I would say I genuinely believe that this is one of my favorite types of podcasts to do that we do is movie reviews. I love doing them.
I definitely think this is actually my favorite. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
And, we've been doing Miss Marvel, and I've kind of come to dread Wednesday mornings a little bit.
Right.
A movie review where... we wait. It's like we wait forever too for the movies.
Right, we wait forever.
Like pros,
we get a trailer quite a few months before. We break it down, and then we have to wait, and then we watch it.
We have time, 3 or 4 days to think about it, get our thoughts together.
Right. Sometimes we see the movie twice, depending. So and I'm excited to get into this movie review of Thor: Love and Thunder. So epic. Spoiler warning ahead because we do go into major spoilers.
Mad spoilers.
So if you've not seen the movie, give us a like, give us a download, then come back later after you've seen the movie and give it a listen. Unless you're just interested in what we think, giving our spoiler review, and then going to watch the movie. If you're like that, I don't understand that, but that's okay with me too. So you can go ahead and listen.
We're not going to judge.
We're not going to judge.
Y'all weird. Let me just say
that is true because I'm not a big spoiler person. So that is very true. All right. So to get into it, initial thoughts for Thor: Love and Thunder, Nathan.
Oh crap! I don't. Ooh, I don't want to get too much into it. Michael and I, just for some backstory, we saw it just this opening weekend. We both saw it opening day, right?
We did both see it opening day, just different showings.
Different showings. I called Michael after I got out of the theater. Michael's movie was done.
We had a pretty long conversation.
Yeah, it was pretty long. I remember I called him and he said hello, and I was just quiet for about 5 or 6 seconds because I really was trying to, just ponder, was this movie as bad as I thought it was? Right. And then you answer, dude, it's not good. And I felt good. I thought I was going crazy or something.
Right.
I was like...
Right. And I had that same reaction. After watching the movie, I was super that did not sit well with me.
Yeah.
And that was my initial reaction because, usually when I was thinking about going into this movie, I had the mindset, I was like, dude, this is probably going to be maybe top 10 movie, top 10, maybe top 15 at least.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
But
they got the recipes.
They had the exact recipe, and it wasn't that, in fact. And I was really disappointed. I mean, watching throughout the movie, it had a great opener, and we'll get into more of that later when we get into the pros and cons. It had a great opener, and then as the movie began to progress and stuff, and I start seeing it being fleshed out, I was like, wow, this movie's not that good.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing.
Lauren and I just kind of sat there in disbelief of what was happening.
Right.
And I was looking around at other people to see if they were feeling it, and some were, and then some were laughing their heads off this is awesome. I was like, what is going on?
Right.
What's going on?
Which it was so crazy to me because I expected to enjoy this movie. So that was just also really weird because I had high hopes for it. And then going in, I was like, wow, this really did not go up to expectations. So we're going to explain ourselves. We're going to get a little bit, more into, we'll go into characters, we'll go into pros, we'll go into cons, and just explain ourselves about this movie and why we didn't necessarily enjoy it as much as other people have, or, what other influencers, TikTokers are talking about it. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So to go into first, right off the bat, we got to talk about characters. And, as we get to character, we'll talk about the pros and cons per character. And then when we get deeper into the pros and cons, we'll go about the movie pros and cons. So first off, we have to start off with the star of the film, Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth. All right. So you want to start us off talking about Thor?
Okay, let's get it. To put it out there, to kind of start everything off, I think this is the worst, version of Thor we've ever seen.
I agree.
Before this, people would say, the original Thor, he was
Dark World.
Or Dark
Thor,
World, but he was, just so staunch, straight face. I guess kind of boring, but I felt that was kind of comic accurate, at least.
Right.
To, what's written. He's never always been a, emotion a super, interesting character. But to see how Waititi butchered my boy Thor, essentially in this movie, he's turned to a big, dumb brute who's only there for comedy.
Exactly.
He's an original Avenger, man.
Right.
His character arc was on the glow up after Endgame. He's healing,
right?
And it feels like a step down,
right?
This movie,
yeah, it absolutely I stress this enough, it absolutely blew my mind because watching this movie, I was thinking, okay, cool, we're seeing Thor on the rebound, kind of, because we see in Thor 1, Thor: The Dark World, we see him as very much serious, brute, not very comedic, just very much like he was in the comic books, which and then a lot of people didn't really like that version. Everybody was like getting over Thor. Even Chris Hemsworth himself said he was getting like tired of the character because of how it is and was. And then it was the same kind of thing in Avengers 1 and Age of Ultron. And then to Taika Waititi, gave him that revival in Ragnarok.
Yeah, and it was funny.
It was funny.
It was needed.
But in that comedic sense, it worked there, and his comedy there worked, because he was going through so much trauma. He was losing his brother again. He lost his father. He lost his mother in Dark World. He, ultimately lost his best friend. He was losing so much stuff. And then we go into Infinity War and we get the best version of Thor ever, where he is kind of that serious brute, but he does have a little bit of flavor comedy that Waititi gave to him.
But he's just like straight out for revenge.
Right. He's straight out for revenge in Infinity War, and that's what made him so amazing in Infinity War, and definitely the best character in Infinity War, I would argue.
For sure.
And then in Endgame, of course, going into that kind of depression state, going into, getting that dad bod and, working it up. And he is comedic, but at the same time, it's because he's depressed. And it works there. And even though I didn't really like that version of Thor very much, this version of Thor in Love and Thunder was even worse. Because they essentially, Taika essentially ruined what he created in Ragnarok. And then when they had Thor in this movie, they made him just too much comedy. They made him every single line. There was not one serious line that he spoke in the entire movie at all. Yeah, there was none.
Yeah,
and that's stupid, to be blunt. Because
I agree.
I mean, Thor as a character, he's gonna have some comedy. He's gonna be funny. He's gonna have some cool likability. But in this movie, it was like he was an idiot. Be like
he was dumb.
It was like a skit.
Actuality, he was stupid.
It was stupid. The best comparison I could put it to was the old skit they did back in 2016 when Civil War came out with Daryl.
What he was doing.
What he was doing during Civil War. Yeah, that was the best comparison, and that was a parody.
Yeah, and that was a parody, bro. I kid you not. He felt more like a parody than that in this movie. Right. Like it felt like this cheap drama school at a university was trying to do, a Thor movie, and this is how it turned out.
It was not realistic.
I guess it got to that point. I know Taika saw the success of Ragnarok, how it's being praised.
Right.
As, top 5, top 10 MCU film.
Right.
And it was good.
Which it is top 10 for sure.
Top 10. And like you said, the comedy supported the movie. It wasn't the main thing. Like I said, Thor's kind of using it to deal, to cope with.
And it still had lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, and we see that happen every day in real life. But he kind of sees it as, I guess, maybe, people like funny Thor. How about I give them more funny Thor?
And end up being too much funny Thor.
Way too much.
Way too much to where at a certain point in the movie, I was like, oh my goodness, how is this possible when he's riding on his hammer like a broom from Harry Potter? What?
Well, dude, that turned me off instantly, and that was within the first 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah, exactly.
The first 10 minutes, I think.
Exactly.
Just doing circles, shouting at them.
And then he's talking to his hammers through his ex-girlfriends. What the frick,
I know.
It just
and
was
that's
so
another thing
dumb.
I hated, but dude, Hemsworth, he's a funny guy.
Right.
He has good comedic timing, and if this was comedy, he did a good job. He did what Taika said. Right. Chris Hemsworth's talented like that, but as far as playing Thor goes, no, bro.
No. And, I do not blame Chris Hemsworth because I do think he does enjoy doing the comedy and does like doing that kind of stuff. And he did play this character like it was a completely different character. It felt like a completely different character than Thor we know. But it genuinely felt like, you made one of the Trinity, original Avengers, one of the most powerful superheroes in Marvel.
Yeah.
A comedic parody that was just an idiot. And he's not an idiot. And he's shown that throughout the ages of every single movie that we've seen him in besides this one, and it failed tremendously.
Yeah, we as Marvel fans, we've all seen how collectively mad we've been seeing, I guess the Hulk's transformation from seeing, his Incredible Hulk film and then seeing how cool he was in Ragnarok and the first Avengers to how he became. This Thor situation is like that, but about 10 times worse.
Yeah, they really it's like they really took the character of Thor that it was and then just burned it. That's how it felt. And it hurt me because I went from being liking Thor all right and being okay, he's pretty cool, to really loving Thor as a character and absolutely being one of my favorite characters within the MCU, mostly because of Infinity War. But even then, and then they butchered that. And that was just so maddening and frustrating for me. as a movie watcher, and to go and see this movie that I expected to be a lot better.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on Thor. Do you have anything else to add about him?
That's about all. Like
Yeah.
you said, we'll cover it more later in our movie
Right.
cons. But as
Right.
far as his character goes, it's sad.
It is super sad. All right, to get into our next character, and I will say this is definitely a highlight of the movie and one of the better parts of the movie, but also a big con of the movie as well on how they did him, and that being Gore, the God Butcherer.
I would like to say, first of all, I am shocked that Christian Bale agreed to this movie.
Yeah.
Obviously, I knew, he didn't know the end result, what it was going to be. And I know his
Right.
kids helped him convince it. He's only seen like one Marvel movie before.
Right.
But his acting, per Christian Bale, as always, was
Right.
top notch, 10 out of 10. At times, the film did really good with him.
Dude, yeah.
And at times, it felt like things were a little bit rushed and things were inconsistent with this character. But as far as just Christian Bale, dude, he freaking killed it.
Dude, he did. He did for sure. And the thing is like, I can't consider him as high of a villain as I thought he would be in the MCU just because of the movie itself.
Yeah.
But he could have easily been one of the best top 3 MCU villains of all time
for
if
sure.
they did it right. And they did not do it right.
Yeah.
And there was so many scenes, like it started off really strong, starting off with the villain, like I always like for them to do.
Yeah.
And then they failed because, his screen time in this movie was so short.
I know.
So short. Like it was probably like, if I had to guess screen time wise, it was probably like 7 minutes or so.
Really?
It was not a
Yeah,
lot.
probably like sub 10.
Yeah.
Well, that just pains me because he was, at least in my opinion, like the one bright spot of this entire film.
Oh, definitely.
In my opinion, he was the only relatable character in the entire film. Like you said, we like when we get to see the villain's backstory first, and it's cool. I don't quite understand how he went from being hungry and thirsty to instantly killing the god. No,
Right.
all gods must die. I thought that transition was a little fast, but
Right.
that wasn't on him. But like you said, if we had seen his character, kind of fleshed out into other projects and with a little better writing, we could have seen so much more. He's inherently a darker character, but his motives are so realistic and grounded. Like, who's to say we wouldn't do the same? If our daughter was dying and the gods, we worship, like,
We're making fun
purposely.
of that.
Yeah, they failed us and they made fun of us,
Right.
for it. He like, that's a real story,
Yeah, and it was a great storyline. It was a great story. It felt compelling. I was compelled to his character. It was relatable.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And I do agree the transition of his reasoning was a little bit odd, but I thought it was also interesting because you see him at the beginning of the movie, him, in pain after his daughter's death, and then, coming up, and at first we think it's like his mirage is in his head.
I thought it was material.
Right. And then he comes upon the gods, and then he's like begging them. He's like, thank you. He's like thanking them still even after his daughter's death, and he's like, thank you. I'm one of your followers.
Yeah, like,
I've
he's
been
like the
following
last
you."
one left. I
Right,
think
one
is
of the
what he
last
says,
followers.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I will make more, and keep making fun of him and betraying him. And then of course the Necro Sword calls to him, and he grabs it and kills the god. And this, unfortunately and definitely terribly, is the only time we see Gore the God Butcher kill in the film.
Yeah.
And it was, awesome. It was dope. He was like, it was feeling the Necrosword was calling to him. It was breaking him down because, his sole purpose now was to kill all gods.
Yeah.
And it was so well executed, and he was scary. Every scene he was in,
He's
he was
terrifying.
like terrifying.
Man. I think
It's
scariest
so cool.
villain we see.
Oh, yeah.
By far.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. And I feel like it was so cool to see him like, walking around and, especially in the black and white scene. Probably my favorite scene in the film, and one of the only good scenes in the film, if I'm being honest. And him walking around, putting his shadow monsters over their faces and getting in their faces, telling them what he's gonna do.
Yeah.
That scene was awesome, and that was an amazing scene of the film, and it was definitely a bright spot. And I was like, this scene's awesome. And going through that and seeing him, in every scene he was in, he stole the show. He was brilliant, and of course Christian Bale as an actor was amazing as Gore. And he wasn't comedic at all in the movie, which is great.
Dude, if he had made a joke, I would have left the
Oh,
theater.
yeah, dude.
Like, for
It
real.
would have been so mad. But he wasn't comedic. He was serious throughout the movie, and it worked so well. And it's so maddening to see how good of a villain he could have been if the movie supported him.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And he should have been in it so much more.
I agree. He should have been in way more. And like you said earlier, we should have seen him solo these other gods. And initially we predicted that he would go, to Mount Olympus and kill him. Obviously,
And that should have happened.
But we only saw it in the beginning. We saw footage later throughout the film, but we never saw him. I think part of that is just Disney. I think a lot of the more quote unquote dark stuff was scrapped. I know Christian Bale himself has said that they filmed like way darker stuff, and Taika chose to cut it, and that makes me mad.
That's so frustrating.
Because I mean, that's who Gore is, and I think honestly that would have worked a little better. Like the really darkness of his character, and then like the humor on top for the good guys. Like that would have worked a little better than seeing what we did.
I mean, I understand them wanting like a family feature film for Marvel, but like. It still would have been cooler for kids to even have been scared while watching it. And then when Thor comes in, beats the bad guy in the end, be like, Yeah. Instead, there wasn't any stakes. There wasn't no like real, reasoning and seeing, what he was doing. And you didn't relate to him near as much as you could have seeing him kill other people. And there was several times in the movie that he did stuff and there are people I'll talk about a little bit later should have died.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And it just did not make sense and did not work. And him being one of the bright spots of the film, they should have used him to be that bright spot. But instead, it's like they canceled him.
Yeah. And imagine how much more like credibility and stakes, like you said, there would have been if we had seen him kill off some gods that either we've seen before or that we know really well, specifically like Zeus. If we had seen him go and wipe out about like 5 to 10 gods at a time that, us as the viewers know, that would have made his battle with Thor a lot more compelling because you know how powerful he is.
I also think that it would have made the end credit scene, the first end credit scene, which I'm not going to go into talk about it yet. We'll talk about it later. I think it would have made the first end credit scene better too.
Yeah.
What it could have been if Gore did kill Zeus, I think it would have been immensely better and so much cooler too to see that. And then, a certain someone to blame, another certain someone for that. Yeah. So that would have been cool, but it unfortunately did not happen. So I really loved the character of Gore. I really wanted to see him more. And also as another Marvel kill villain after one movie thing, which is also stupid.
I hate this formula, man.
I know.
I know Christian Bale probably, wouldn't ever want to do.
They only ever keep villains. Have you realized this? They only ever keep villains that have redemption arcs, like Taskmaster,
even
Black
Thanos?
Widow. Thanos died.
That's right.
So
they all got died
Zemo,
sometime.
right? Zemo.
Loki died eventually.
Loki did die eventually.
But he was like the longest
they keep
tenured
her,
villain.
Right. Agatha, they kept her. I mean, other characters that seem to have redemptive qualities is the only thing that other keep. Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
The worst. I think Disney's just trying too hard to give redemption arcs to the villains. I think it's, I don't know, maybe more relatable sometimes. Like they're just bad,
right?
Because they're bad,
right?
There is no redeeming this character. Like they're too far gone. I think that's a cool concept.
It is.
And we don't get to see that enough in the
MCU. I mean, the only character, like you said, was Thanos that they kind of prolonged and was a villain that they kind of did, and that was amazing and brilliant, and everybody loved it. And Gore, I feel like could have been that, and I feel like I would have loved to have seen him in another movie as a villain again, but it's just so unfortunate that we didn't.
Sad, man.
I know. Do you have any final thoughts on Gore?
That's about all. Shout out Christian Bale. Without you, man.
This movie
I can't imagine what this movie is.
Yeah.
And that's hard to beat.
Yeah, and it is. All right, so get into our next character, and that being Jane Foster. All right, so I'll start us off with Jane. I will say that it's weird to talk about because part of me enjoyed what they did with Jane's character, and part of me didn't as well, because I feel like I really think if they went a certain direction, we would have absolutely loved Jane so much more and it would have been so much cooler, but they didn't go that direction. Instead made it comedic, and that failed. But at the same time, I did like Jane in this movie. I did think that they did give her more of a likable quality than she had in the original movie she was in. But at the same time, they didn't utilize as much as they could have.
I agree. And I think a lot of that falls on the writing. But as far as the character itself goes, I liked her.
Yeah.
I liked the back and forth that she had with Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
The backstory that we got to see with them when they were dating was really cool. It gave more insight into their relationship, how she operated. Seeing her, in straight human form as she's struggling with cancer, just really struck a chord with me. Because we don't get, I don't know, we don't get to see like people struggling like that too much, at least in the MCU.
And that was another bright spot of the film. I do agree. But the only thing is they turn around and make it a joke.
I know. Instantly. And that's terrible. But, dude, I enjoyed Natalie Portman. I thought she did a good job. I think as far as her like transition goes to Mighty Thor, I think the writing could have been a bit better.
I agree.
I know that doesn't fall on her.
Right.
But I generally thought her and Thor's chemistry wasn't too bad.
I agree too. And it also made her, she made a lot of jokes too. Not quite as much as Hemsworth, but she made quite a bit of jokes too. And it's weird too because she was never a comedic character at all.
And they didn't stick at all. None of the jokes were really funny.
No.
But especially hers were like slapping your face.
especially when she
outlandish.
was delivering her lines at the end of the movie. I was like,
Dude,
oh my gosh, that was horrible.
I know.
That was horrible. I was thinking the whole time, this is like the ice cream song all over again in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Like, I'm having PTSD. Like, it's awful.
Yeah.
Like, this is horrible. And like, she's like, I'm the Mighty Thor. I'm Dr. Jane Foster.
And if you're gonna call me,
I wonder if Taika was like, everybody's gonna be like, yeah.
let's give her a 3-point speech as she's fighting with the God Butcher with a bunch of kids' lives on the line and all the gods' lives. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was
Right.
terrible.
And I think it was super creative, her storyline. I think her storyline was good. They just didn't execute it properly. Like the whole thing with Mjolnir and the pieces coming together for her because Thor, mentioned it and the magic within Mjolnir, would take care of her always. That was cool.
Yeah,
I love that
And you
concept.
saw like the symbol flash. There was a promise, like
Yeah.
a sacred oath between them. That was cool.
That was cool.
I like how they
it was like a
explained
callback to Odin, banning Thor.
That was cool getting to see all the flashbacks too from the prior
That
movies.
was cool. Like the flashbacks, when they were dating and stuff. Like, of course it was too funny. It was too comedic, and that was at a time that Thor was serious. But
I know.
yeah, I know.
I was like, bro, I swear Thor in 2013 would have done that.
No,
I appreciate it.
not at all. But it was a nice, nice to see a little bit more of their backstory fleshed out. But at the same time, it just was unfortunate that they made it too comedic. That failed a lot of ways there.
Yeah, and I really think they could have done a little more with Natalie Portman in this film and even in future projects.
Oh, yeah.
You might still get to see that,
yeah.
but I wasn't a huge fan of how she ended up either. We'll talk about that later.
Mm.
But overall, she wasn't a dark spot, but I don't think she was a bright spot.
I do think, if I had to say, if I'm being honest about Thor: Love and Thunder, the two best characters in Thor: Love and Thunder were for sure Gore and Jang. If I'm being honest, I feel like it just is. And even though they didn't do it properly, it could have been so much better. And I love the use of Mjolnir in this movie. It was fantastic. The
that was a very creative idea.
Right.
Shout out Taika. That's one thing he did really well.
That was really, really done well. And that was awesome.
Coming back together.
Right.
That's a cool idea.
Right. And even Jane and Valkyrie's relationship, that was kind of cool, to see their friendship and stuff and their sisterhood kind of grow, because we know in the comics that Jane does become a Valkyrie at some point too after becoming Mighty Thor, which they still may explore. I don't know. Yeah. But it's still pretty cool to see that. And of course, they end up killing her off in the end, unfortunately. And then they killed her off in such a way that it didn't feel emotional at all.
Yeah.
Like,
when I was watching it, I didn't care.
I was like, is this Star Wars? What are we doing here? She just disappears.
I know. It's like Master Uguay when he disappears.
Know, exactly.
When he's on the mountain with Poe.
Yeah, exactly. He's just
My time has come.
My time has come.
You must
Master.
No.
Master,
no.
Oh, Shifu.
That's what I thought it was.
I know, yeah.
It was happening, but we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah,
Yeah.
like we said, she was solid, man.
Yeah,
like,
she was. She was.
She could have been better, but
even some of her jokes were not that good, but she was still a cool character, and I feel like we could have. It would have been cool to see more of her too. But that was also very unfortunate. And even the cancer storyline, I feel like the whole comics book with that was so emotional, so greatly written, and it is a really good Thor comic book.
Yeah.
And then they didn't do it well. And also, I really think, they didn't need to shave Natalie Portman's head, but if they would have like CGI'd it or done something like that and made it more emotional and made her seem weaker like she was, because she had stage 4 cancer, man, that's pretty serious.
yeah, she still had a beautiful head of hair.
I know she should have
Going
been,
into
not
chemo.
have had hair.
Yeah.
And to see that and see her like in the comics, she didn't have hair and she was so pale and weak, and to see that and then to be like, and then the Mjolnir to come to her and then her become Mighty Thor, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved that.
But better than what we see, like
Right.
her just walking around the
Right. And
Jonathan
then they kind of,
exhibit.
they go with the cancer storyline and then they just kind of forget it and then they bring it back and it's in a comedic way and then it's stupid and then she just dies. And it's just like it doesn't work well.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And it could have. It could have been super emotional, could have been super impactful. And instead they just decided to, now we don't need that in this comedy. And it needed it. Really did. And that was unfortunate. So any final thoughts about the Mighty Thor?
That's about all.
All right. So let's go on to a next character, and that being Valkyrie.
I found her character just very tasteless and bland.
Because this character was the same character from the beginning of this movie to the end of this movie. There was no stakes, no change.
No character development.
No character development, zero.
I think part of the reason why she was so intriguing in Ragnarok is, number one, you didn't know her backstory. And number two, she was plagued with guilt the entire
Plagued with guilt
time.
and that build up to wanting to go back to Asgard to serve.
Yeah. But in this, she's just like, oh, whatever.
Pulls out a Bluetooth speaker.
Bluetooth speaker.
That was dumb. That was so dumb. And they just start bopping their heads.
Yeah, like Like
I'm laughing at the movie, by the way, not with it.
You could have removed her character from the movie and would have felt the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
she made no like extreme impact on it.
And when I was
whatsoever.
initially watching the trailers, I thought that she would be a subplot of the movie. I figured that it would be her in New Asgard, like running things while like shadow monsters were attacking it and she'd be defending it and that kind of stuff, while the rest of them were going after Gore.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been better as well if they would have done that too.
I also feel like the movie was a little inconsistent with her character as to why would she let the new Asgard become a strictly tourist town.
Dude, yeah.
Like, it seemed like she just didn't care about anything anymore.
Doing Old Spice commercials.
Old Spice commercials. Like, I don't understand how her character specifically in New Asgard I thought was the worst version of the character.
Another thing that they did so poorly that would have made the movie better and more impactful, and it's not that like I don't like Valkyrie, it just would have made the movie like more impactful and deeper, is if she would have died. When she fought Gore with the lightning bolt and he killed her with the lightning bolt, that would have been so much more impactful. It would have given more stakes. It would have given Thor more of a push. Yeah. But instead, she just says she loses a liver when she got stabbed with Zeus's lightning bolt. Yeah. Like, that's not possible.
Yeah, she said, I just lost a kidney, but you have possibly like the most OP weapon, you know?
Exactly.
Maybe at least how we've seen.
Exactly.
Stabbed in the back, straight.
And she's not like, yeah, she's a Valkyrie, she's an Asgardian, she has, higher, abilities than humans do, but she's not like a god, she's not Thor.
Yeah.
So she should have died by that lightning bolt, and it went right through her, and it would have made more of an impactful storyline, and it would have been like, okay, there's stakes.
That raises the stakes.
Exactly, and we would have seen Gore kill somebody else, and see him kill somebody, a character that a lot of people like. And then they just played off as another joke saying, I lost my liver, I'm okay.
Yeah, but by the way, it's just like, dude, it's so cheap. And obviously, that's one of the biggest differences between DC and Marvel. Like, when something bad happens in DC, like, you see the consequences. Marvel, especially, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, they just brush it off, like, with comedy. Like, it's not realistic at all. The reason why we liked Valkyrie in the first place because she was realistic, because a lot of us were struggling with
and
kill,
she was relatable.
Relatable. We saw how she dealt with it, but like this, bro, like, are you kidding me?
No.
Oh no, it was just
and it was like all she was
sad,
like
man.
Somebody to be with Jane and hang out with Jane is like all she did.
Yeah, just like her like buddy the entire movie,
and she was all comedy too. She didn't speak one line of seriousness like at all. And it was
one
so
thing that pissed me off to no extent, dude, was when Thor is trying to rescue children whose lives are on the line, which she knows, and she's just tickling his nose with the feather, interfering.
Dude, that
you're
was
trying to
so
save
stupid.
Kids.
That was so
from
stupid.
A murderer.
Like that,
and you're
is
playing
insane.
around trying to distract him.
I know.
That actually
he's literally
interferes.
trying to talk to kids. I mean.
Like, she would never do that.
No,
she would never do
not
that.
Not his character. No, I mean, and especially comics Valkyrie. Like comics Valkyrie was super serious, and
she's serious. She's courageous.
Right, she's courageous. She has storyline, and they just ruined that.
By the way, let me give you the worst chance you can actually stand with these.
Yeah.
What?
It just did not make sense. And all I keep thinking about is just her blowing out what looked like a grenade and then playing Bluetooth speaker and just nodding her head. What was that?
Holy bro.
I'm so shocked.
I didn't like it. I think it'd been cool to see like her struggling to adjust to life on Earth.
Yeah,
like not fitting in.
That would have been so good.
Struggling with Wi-Fi, with Bluetooth.
Struggling with the government issues. Struggling with politics.
I don't know what this means.
Right.
Yeah.
Struggling as the, new king of Asgard.
And they could have still made that comedic too.
They could have.
Like she's just ignorant. She doesn't know this
but
easy
made a
stuff
good
about
storyline.
Wi-Fi.
Right.
Yeah. Because she's more concerned with saving lives and running a kingdom.
Right.
But
and instead,
you know what?
It did not. It was just so disappointing. All right, to move on from Valkyrie, we got to talk about another big comedic character because, it's not a movie that has a comedic relief character. It's a movie where we needed a character to give us seriousness, and instead we got Gore. But we got to talk about Korg. What'd you think?
I didn't think Korg was bad in this film. I definitely thought there's a little downgrade from Ragnarok.
Yeah.
With Korg's comedy, I was kind of fine with. Like, that's kind of who he was.
It's who he is. It's just a part. Yeah.
Like, he's a loyal friend, but he just says cheesy things, and he's funny. He's just dumb as a rock, which he is.
Yeah.
In this film, he's kind of the same.
Right.
I feel like there's not too much going on.
Not too much to talk about with Korg. I mean, yeah, he is funny. He has some funny parts. I will say there was one point I was shocked, and that's when Zeus threw the lightning bolt at him, and you think he's dead for like a split second. Yeah. I genuinely thought they killed him. I was like, "Whoa, they killed Korg."
I think they should have too. Like, imagine Valkyrie and Korg both died. Like, I really don't think they have a good future. Like in the MCU, like they're just not big enough. Yes, we like Korg and he's funny, dude is made of rock, and he took a lightning bolt straight to the chest, and he broke into a million pieces. We find out, all he needs is his face.
All he needs is his mouth. That's his only thing living in a Cronin.
And then Valkyrie tying him to the back of her head was so dumb.
Getting
and they
the
never
Voldemort vibes from from the first one.
And they never explained how he gets his body back.
No.
The writing with him was bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad. But as a character, like...
And he's voiced by Taika himself.
He's voiced by Taika, so yeah, he's gonna do Taika.
And yeah, he was funny, and I love Korg. I still do, but it was just like so stupid that I don't know. It didn't fit with a lot. And again, like you said, I don't see his future in the MCU as well. And I will say though that the thing that's different is Korg is a comic book character, and he is a completely different character in the comics and cartoons than he is in this show. He's in the comics and cartoons, he's actually super serious and super he's very deep voice, and he's someone who cares about his people and stuff, which I like this version of Korg a lot, but at the same time, it'd been cool to see like a more serious side of him, a caring side of him as well, but we didn't get that either. So.
Yeah, we just had to copy and paste from Ragnarok.
Exactly.
Which,
really, and a lot of his jokes in Love and Thunder did not land as good as they did in Ragnarok. Like, his Ragnarok jokes were hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, him talking about, like, piss off ghosts. That was
ghosts.
hilarious. Like, I love that.
That's our friends should quote it.
Oh, yeah, I quote that all the time. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I'm trying to start a rebellion. Like, that's hilarious.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Like, Loki going, you desperate need of a leader. Thanks, man. Like, that's hilarious. And it worked well in Ragnarok, but it did not work well here. And that was so disappointing as well.
I agree. Like you said, same character, but the circumstances didn't add up for that same result.
Right. All right. Next up, we got to talk about, and I sigh when I say this, Russell Crowe's Zeus. You talk about a character that was horrible, and it made sense that's how he acted as a god, but the accent was horrible. Everything about it was just did not work. It was not funny, and I was just like over it the whole time. He gets stabbed in lightning bolt, ends up being alive still, like
with a hole in his chest.
Yeah.
I will say, like you mentioned, to Taika's credit, he's using Zeus as the main example for how all gods are. They don't care about other people.
I get that to an extent.
They care about them. They're selfish. They're prideful. So I appreciate what he did with that, but as far as the choice for the accent, like, what accent was that?
I don't even know.
Flick.
Flick.
Like,
let's see what's under the.
Zeus was Greek, right? He was originally.
I don't know if that's Greek accent or not.
Greek mythology.
And even then, though, like, since it is going into the detail of the gods, which still is super confusing when you think about the MCU as a whole, it's just like. It didn't make sense,
Yeah, and this seemed like a parody of a parody.
It did.
Of a parody of Zeus.
It did. And I feel like it could have been a lot cooler.
It felt like this Zeus. I will say that the CGI and his just whole bolt, his lightning bolt in his arm, it just looked dumb.
Yeah, it did.
Like, it just really looked dumb. And
it didn't feel like Russell Crowe at all.
It did not.
It did not. And Russell Crowe's a very good actor, so it's like really weird.
Yeah, it's weird to see him in this, I guess, kind of role, because
I know.
This was probably one of the most disappointing parts about the movie. I was looking forward to getting to see him.
Now that I think about it, if I'm being honest, I really think that the actors who portray, in the movie, like, who do the play in the movie, like we had Melissa McCarthy as Heimdall and then Matt Damon as Loki and then, like all these other characters. I feel like they could have produced a better like movie. Than this
really. Matt Damon would have been a great addition, dude.
Like, come on, man.
Spin-off.
And I mean, to think about, like, they had all of this potential too. Like Zeus, was just not very well done. And on top of this, the stacked cast, and it just didn't work.
I would have liked to see a little more of Zeus's power. Like,
I would have.
We understand, from mythology and the movie and stuff. Like, he only cares about himself.
I really wanted to see him fight Gore.
But yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. We want to see more power. That way, when they're fighting Thor and his gang up in the place that they were, I don't even know what it's called. Like, there'd be stakes involved. You're like, wow, this is the most powerful. We hear Thor say it, but all we see is choosing this from Zeus.
Yeah, and it's just
Thor versus Zeus.
It would have been so cool, or even Thor versus Zeus. Like, that would have been cool as well. And instead, he just threw the lightning bolt through his chest, and then he ended up being living alive.
Taika could have done like a similarity when Hela storms Asgard. They could have done a whole, gore storms, the god place.
Right.
Like that would be
that
cool.
would have been cool. And I mean, I do see the potential. I do agree. We did not need to like Zeus, but like I didn't like him not because of how he was in the movie, but just because of how it was written. I just didn't like that. So, and a lot of the comedy and making jokes about like sexual stuff the whole time was just not, I didn't enjoy that either. So, as again with Zeus. All right. Any other thoughts on Zeus?
That's about all.
All right. Now we got to talk about the kids in general, the kids' plot, along with Heimdall's son that I didn't even know existed, for one thing. What'd you think?
Holy, this part was entirely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Entirely inconsistent with Gore's character. He can have children because he's doing it for love for his daughter.
I know.
So that doesn't make sense. The kind of the first impression we get of the whole kids aspect is Heimdall's son, which is cool, right? It makes it more relatable. He has a kid.
It was cool.
But like his
who
whole
has,
kid,
shares
like,
his father's
my
powers.
name's not this. It's actually this. Like that's instantly what we get.
That was comedy.
Like,
and plus, even the floating head, that was horrible CGI. Like that, it was horrible. Yeah. Like it was so bad.
It was pretty bad.
Heimdall never had a floating head. He just showed Thor visions or appeared in front of him. Which I guess they're explaining the reasoning is he doesn't grown into his powers yet. But still, it just wasn't a fit. And I'm trying to hurry up because these kids, I just don't really like talking about them because of how horrible it was.
Yeah.
But like the whole kids plot was awful. And then Thor giving them powers in the end was probably one of my least favorite parts in the entirety of the MCU. Yeah. Like it genuinely felt like a Spy Kids movie. And that works in Spy Kids, but it doesn't work in Thor Love and Thunder. And it was horrible.
It's like, if all you kids believe you can have the power of Thor,
temporarily.
And somehow all the kids suddenly believe. And now they're suddenly like demigods fighting these shadow monsters coming from the Necro Sword.
Somebody fighting with a bunny.
Yeah. And first of all, there's no stakes. You got 5 and 6 year olds fighting monsters. For a fact in MCU, you're not gonna see a monster rip apart a kid.
No.
Like that's not happening. So the entire fight, you're like, all right, once it's gonna be over, they're gonna win. Like you said, a bunny like spinning around, slapping people.
A bunny spinning around, shooting lightning. That was probably no. That might have been the dumbest piece of the MCU ever. If you tell me
going to this movie, I see a kid with like a gold bunny spinning around,
shooting lightning out,
killing monsters. Dude, I would have not gone and seen it.
No. It's so disappointing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it with the kids. Like everything about the kids was just
terrible
awful.
plot.
I know.
Would have been better without it.
Not enjoying. It would have been so much better. Should have killed more people. But
facts. I agree.
So disappointing. Now we got to talk about, of course, the short-lived Guardians of the Galaxy.
I thought they were in the movie longer than what. They were in the movie longer than what I thought they were going to be.
I think they were in the movie shorter, really, than I thought they were going to be. And I think the movie would have benefited more if they were in it more, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, like...
And all of their parts were good, though.
Yeah, they were great, but you can only have him in there for so long because Thor got to go on his own journey.
Right.
But the way Taika wrote it with Thor's departure and how he's acting with the team, that's like a total drama queen. Yeah. Which is dumb. In and of himself, the Guardians were the Guardians.
Yeah.
Like, they were funny.
They were great. They were
a unit.
The normal Guardians.
They were consistent. It felt like James Gunn was writing them.
Love seeing Rocket again. It was great.
Rocket.
And who knows, James Gunn might have corresponded with Taika on that scene. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, it was just so like, they could have been better too. And I would have loved to have seen more Thor Guardian interaction. And maybe we'll get that in the holiday special or whatever. But again, like, I do think the movie would have been cooler if they were in it more too, if I'm being honest. Like, I really think it would have been cool. Like, it's Thor 4, not 4, it's not like Thor 1, it's Thor 4. Give Guardians and Thor a movie,
I wonder, would we be saying that if the movie wasn't as bad as it was?
No, we wouldn't be saying that because it would have been a good movie, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing.
Yeah, I really did enjoy it. Like you said, they felt entirely like themselves. But, dude... I don't know. Like, I really liked the way like Thor left them off. Like, we've seen that for a while. They've been traveling, and like finally, like they become like so different. Like, Thor is just kind of like ruining everything they're doing.
Yeah.
But like that's weird because it fits like how bad of a character he is like in the movie.
I know.
So it makes sense in that aspect, but not in the whole like timeline aspect.
Right.
So
all right. To move on from the Guardians of the Galaxy, we got to talk about Lady Sith, who also was completely different from her original character and also placed in a joke. Was not in the movie a lot, and Jen was just a joke.
It feels like Taika, when he was writing this movie, was thinking, I'm pretty sure I've killed all of Thor's friends in Ragnarok. Oh, wait, I forgot one, Lady Sif. So he throws her in there for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's honestly what it feels like.
It did.
Lady Sif, I feel like it's a big enough character to at least get, like, a minute maybe.
Lady Sif's
fight
a
scene
bigger
with
character
Thor.
than Valkyrie. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And it's his, in
And
the
we see it in
comics
multiple
and stuff.
movies and in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
Like, how cool would it have been to see her lead an army?
Oh, yeah.
Like, just by herself
Cool.
against Thor.
And the whole
get
joke
wiped
with
out.
her laying on the ground saying, I want to die in battle and go to Valhalla. And he's like, you only go to Valhalla if you die in the battle,
Yeah.
not if you survive the battle and just laying here. Maybe your arm's in Valhalla.
Maybe,
And
dude,
she's like,
everyone
"Oh,
laughed
frick."
at my theater.
Really? Everybody
Yeah,
laughed?
dude, I was so pissed. I was like, you just making jokes about her arm in Valhalla?
Mine was crickets in the theater when that happened. Mine was very much
Really?
crickets.
I wish I was in your theater.
Yeah, I know. My theater was better.
Holy, man.
But yeah, that was so disappointing. And again, they just gave her no arm. And she's still alive, and she's still a cool character, so I wish they would have explored her more. But unfortunately, they didn't and made it
Yeah.
a joke. So.
I know. It would have been fine. It would have been better if she had died. To be honest, more stakes, see gore wipes.
But it
through
would
her.
have been not. It wasn't. It wasn't cool that they made a joke though. It would have
Yeah.
been work there.
Like, he just shows up and, like, her body's there.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
Yeah.
he moves on, grieves.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
that would have been interesting. But instead, they do not do that. All right. Anyway, to move on to, I actually enjoyed this part. I will say of this character, and that being Eternity. I actually liked Eternity, and I mean, of course, he didn't talk, but seeing Eternity in this like all powerful being in the MCU, they've been building up kind of to it, was cool, and to see him like it looks like his comic book self, and them going and Gore wanting to go to Eternity to wish that all gods would die. That is actually pretty cool, and I enjoyed that part of the movie, even though it was very short.
Yeah, Eternity. It's kind of hard to talk about Eternity as like a
Right, as a
like
character.
pros and cons of the character.
Right.
It was a really cool concept.
Yeah.
And the way they executed was kind of weird. Like, was there only just one wish that Eternity could have given?
Right.
Right. It just seems weird to me that
That is
no
a bit
one would
odd.
ever.
It's like
go
a
there.
genie.
Thor knew about Eternity the whole time.
Yeah, allegedly.
As far as I know, and he had Stormbreaker. So during Thanos, he just could have. You know what?
He
I
could have
wish
gone to
Thanos
Eternity,
dies.
wish for
I
him to
wish
come
this
back.
never happened.
Yeah.
So that seemed a little cheesy in that aspect, but seeing Eternity, the Celestial, was pretty dope.
It was pretty cool. And then, of course, it led us into this next character, Gore wishing back for his daughter to be alive in Love, which that's what I'm going to call her because I don't think she has a name that we know besides Gore's daughter, so Love. What did you think about her? The one highlight I will say is she was played by Chris Hemsworth's daughter in real life. So that's
Really?
cool. That was actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter who played her.
Huh. You think she's going to have more screen time?
I don't know, unless they may recast her. Because she's not
I think
an
they'll
actress,
probably
but-
end up recasting it. I know they're like cheap labor because I use Watita's kids and
Yeah.
now Portman's kids, but she wasn't a great actor. Obviously,
Right.
she's a little girl,
But she's just young, yeah.
The
I
way
didn't
the-
like it,
The way
yeah.
the movie ended, she was cool in the beginning. 'cause
Yeah.
it added to Gore's story, but at the end with her and Thor, like
Her
packing
Thor
up to
becoming
go
a
to
single dad.
school, but now it's like
I don't think it made sense that he was like her dad after fighting this Gore who wanted to kill all these villains. It didn't make sense to me, and I just did not enjoy that part. And her having the powers of like Eternity, it seemed like she has like Eternity powers,
Yeah.
and like we saw in the water, her looking like Eternity. So that was interesting, and I'm interested to see that storyline. The whole build up of the reason the movie's called Love and Thunder being because it's about Thor and his daughter, his future daughter.
I think that's a very bad decision.
Yeah, it was
because she's
bad.
in the movie about a minute.
Yeah.
2, maybe
Yeah.
3 minutes at the most.
Right.
Anything in the movie about
and then
her,
him giving her Stormbreaker to fight with, it's just like
it just
I didn't like that. I did not like that at all, and I wasn't a huge fan of Love. So, any other final thoughts
you
for
don't
her?
like love.
Wasn't a huge fan of it.
That's all my thoughts on it.
All right. So briefly, before we get into our pros and cons, we're going to talk about other cameos that actually were awesome to the movie and actually were two good parts of the movie, and that being Darcy, which I love Darcy. Love seeing Kat Dennings back. I didn't think she was going to be in the
We
movie.
should have
So.
gotten to see more of her,
I wanted to
man.
see more. I mean,
she's always just Darcy.
that
That's
was
cool
one
to
of the
see.
parts where my theater was reactive. Like my theater clapped a little bit for Darcy.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
I was like, babe, it's Darcy.
I like my people have taste.
Yeah.
Because I love
No,
Darcy.
she's a legend. I
She
can't
is.
lie. I can't lie.
She's great. And I would have loved to have seen her as more of a crucial plot of this movie. And of course, getting a brief cameo of Dr. Eric Salvig as well, trying to help Jane.
Dude, I've always wanted more Selvig,
Mm-hmm.
bro. He has such a huge part in Dark World, which is not a great movie.
And Avengers, yeah.
But he's a cool character,
Mhm.
man. And I feel like there should have been more of him. Like, well, he would have contributed more to the cancer, Mighty Thor storyline because he's trying his best to help her out.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I wish we could have gotten to see him in person.
Right.
There with
Right,
her,
instead of just like a
supporting
FaceTime
her
video.
in the lab. Yes, that would
Mhm.
have been cool.
That would have been cool. And I love seeing those cameos. And of course, they were two highlights of the movie. But other than that, that was it. And I wish they could have been in it more, to be honest. All right, so now we got to get into our pros and our cons. I guess we'll start with the pros. We'll start with the highlights, some of the good parts of the movie, and it's not going to probably take very long for these. So,
Yeah, I would say so.
Nathan, you want to hit us with your first pro?
The first pro, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for both of us by saying this is the single biggest pro and possibly like the only pro, besides some minor stuff.
Right.
And that is Christian Bale as Gore.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Of course, we highlighted him talking about him.
Honestly, I hate reading TikTok comments and stuff on YouTube because it's always like, no cap, bus in, WL, he carried. But to say it, he carried.
Yeah,
like he really did,
he
man.
Did.
We said earlier, without him, this movie would be an absolute
atrocity.
Atrocity.
Yeah.
I was gonna say atmosphere. I was like, atmosphere is not the right word.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Dude, atrocity, man. You got Christian Bale is one of the best actors ever, and he absolutely delivers. I feel sorry for the script and the writing he was dealing with because in his scenes he stole. I wish he had 4 times as much storyline. I wish we got to see way more of him.
So much more.
Like we mentioned earlier, he was scary. He was wearing all white, and he was still intimidating. He was freaky. He was well written. He was the only character that we as MCU fans could relate with. And how often can you say that? I relate with the villain and only the villain.
Yeah.
That's either like genius directing or that's terrible directing.
And I think it's the latter on this one.
Yeah, it's the latter. His opening scene was cool. His motives, we understand. They're realistic. They're grounded. Like, I don't know, man. Props to Christian Bale, man. I'm sorry.
I agree.
To see what they did, but you killed it, man.
And I had that as a re-highlighted pro as well, for sure. One of the better parts of the movie. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I have as a pro the opening of the movie because the opening of the movie was super good. You get to know Gore. You start with the villain. I always love it when the movie starts the villain, except when they fail. And this movie failed. But I love it when they do that. And of course, starting with the backstory, how he got the Necro Sword, how he became the God Butcher himself. That was awesome. And that was a huge pro for me.
You want to hit us with the next pro?
I'll hit us with another pro, yeah. I enjoyed the visuals of the movie. I think the visuals
that
were
was
really
the
good.
second one I had too.
The visuals were really well done. Some of the CGI was spotty, but some of it was good at the same time too. And I think the visuals and the costumes, I thought they were really good. Some were cheesy, some were good. But I think overall, the visuals and the costumes, working hand in hand, were really good. The bright lights were great. Yeah. The boats, the Rainbow Bridge, the lightning effects were
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah, they were beautiful. And I love the bright colors of this movie. I think that worked, and that benefited the movie to an extent. But of course, that's my pro for that.
Yeah, my third pro kind of piggybacks right off that, and it's a scene in particular. It's a black and white scene. I thought that was a really cool, creative idea. You see,
that's my next pro.
I'm glad we think alike. You see like the shadow, like planet, like drain everything. I think it was really cool just to see a sudden flip in black and white.
Yeah,
like in a modern superhero movie. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a cool concept, and it made Christian Bale, like, it just gave him more credit as a villain, and it was more intimidating as that way too.
I agree. And I mean, that black and white scene was next level. That was awesome. I mean, that and the opening scene, I would argue, are probably the 2 best scenes in the film, and maybe even the two only good scenes in the film.
The 2 only.
The only other one I can think of is Jane, when it first shows her with her cancer storyline with Darcy in that scene. That's probably the only other scene I can think of that was good.
Yeah.
And those 2 scenes were in particular really amazing. The black and white scene, the effects were awesome. The visuals were great. Everything about that scene was super cool and menacing and effective. You felt what's going on.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that scene. All right. And next up, my final pro. Yeah. And this is so unfortunate that I have a final pro, but this is my final pro, and that being exploring the relationship with Jane and Thor.
Bro, stop it. Dude, that was the 4th one I had.
Really?
And my last one,
really?
Too, was their backstory.
Yeah.
I kid you not, like right here.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. We had all the same pros.
Holy.
That's insane. Let's see if we have the same cons. All right, funny. So exploring the relationship between Jane and Thor, I enjoyed, and seeing them fall back into love with each other, I liked, and going back in time and seeing their story being fleshed out more and getting to know their relationship more, I enjoyed, and that was super cool.
Yeah, throughout the movie's weave, it just kind of seemed to us like, all right, you're attractive, let's make out. And we, like honestly,
exactly.
Like, and we've never seen backstory as to like why they're attracted to each other, like how the relationship works. And these like comedic like back scenes like kind of it gave us that insight that we needed.
Yeah.
Obviously it wasn't like super great, but like we've been missing that because before like they would just like kiss and make out and like get mad at each other and come back together. It's like,
Exactly.
all right, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the
Crazy.
last pro I had, and it hurts because we had one big one and 3 tiny ones. And
Dude, yeah. Yeah, that's depressing. That's all the pros. All right, so getting to, I guess, the cons now on this list. So the cons. So I'll start us off with the cons. So we got several. So first off, right off the bat, again, talking again about Thor, and I feel like this movie was a movie that made fun of the character that we've grown to love. And to piggyback off of that, and that being because of the predominantly way too much use of comedy. It was horrible for the movie. I think, if they wanted to make it a comedy, they still could have. And what makes this movie even worse in my mind is the fact that I can see how this movie could work as a comedy and made it even better and could have even been a top 10 MCU movie if they did, what I'm thinking in my mind. But they failed. And instead of doing that and bringing up stakes, which, a good comedy movie wouldn't work without stakes, and it needed stakes. And it didn't have that. And the way too much comedy just, wasn't feeding. And to even, to go in that extent, my theater, watching this movie, usually when it's a comedy, you have laughs. You have quite a few laughs. I went and saw Minions Rise of Gru. Everybody was laughing the whole time. It was great.
Yeah.
And then watching this movie, there was probably like a few times, less than 5 times, where there was few chuckles, a few laughters. And that was it in my theater. And the only other time there was reaction was one person that was right next to me cried when Jane died, and then one person clapped, or a couple people clapped for Darcy. That was it.
Yeah.
And I loved that, being in the theater because of that.
Man, I wish I could say the same. Mine was there's a lot of kids, a lot of older people, so I think they were just taking it straight for the comedy. But you're absolutely right. The comedy in this movie hugely overpowers everything.
Literally nothing could be taken seriously.
Yeah, like absolutely nothing. And when we talked about this the night we saw it, but there's about maybe 1 or 2 like actually serious moments without a joke. And when we do get to see him, it almost feels wrong because they've gone so long with the joke in it. When they don't, you're like, this is a genuine, serious moment. They're not going to do something with the joke.
And
like,
you didn't expect it because
bad.
you were expecting the joke.
Yeah.
And you couldn't enjoy it as much.
Yes.
And that, I'm so mad.
Like literally everything. The comedy, it overpowered the script, all the dialogue, just who the characters were. Like that was, if I had never seen an MCU movie and I walked in, I don't know who these characters were, I'd just probably tell you it was a pretty bad comedy movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't think it's funny. I didn't think it's funny. I chuckled maybe once.
I laughed a few times, and I can't even remember the laughs a few times. And some of the times that I laughed was at the movie.
Yeah,
literally at the movie. I was laughing when the kids were getting powers because I was laughing at the movie how bad it was written. So bad. And that's just me. It was just so, I was like mind blown. And like I said, me and Nathan both agree we're not huge comedy people when it comes to MCU. We're not huge comedy people. We're not like, we enjoy it to be like a lot more serious, kind of like the Winter Soldier vibe or Infinity War Endgame. Like we like that. And I enjoy some comedy like Ragnarok. Even I had a lot of cons with Ragnarok because of the comedy.
Yeah.
But this was that on a whole nother level.
Yeah,
this is Ragnarok
like
times 10.
Steroids. like honestly.
And the jokes didn't even sit that much with me. I mean, I'd have to rewatch it and just like, I think I might enjoy this movie better if I rewatched it, cleared my brain, and just watched it like for jokes. Like I might enjoy it more if I'm being honest. But even then, I don't know because I went and saw this movie once, and I don't know if I want to see it again.
I definitely don't want to see it again. And
so,
I usually do with the Marvel movies. But you're absolutely right, and that is by far the biggest con. Like we said, I think Taika just got lost in thinking that's what the fans wanted after Ragnarok.
Exactly,
but it's not. It worked perfectly with Ragnarok. It
had a good story.
The main story.
Right.
And the comedy feels like the story. Right. I can't lie.
And this, for it being a full-fledged comedy and that's all it wasn't even the funniest movie in the MCU.
Dude,
that's what's crazy. Like
Ant-Man
I would probably say
funnier.
Ant-Man's funnier. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy's funnier. Yeah. Thor Ragnarok's funnier. I mean, what the heck? Like, Taika, you had one job and you failed this job. So depressing. And that is my number one and biggest con.
I absolutely agree. Piggybacking right off that point, I feel like this deserves its own separate point. But this thing probably made me the most mad in the movie. And it's Thor and the love triangle with his hammers. This,
Gosh.
dude, I genuinely wanted to get up after seeing a lot of this. First of all, they gave Stormbreaker and Jonathan emotions. They could move on their own. Stormbreaker was jealous of Jonathan. They were always vying for Thor or Natalie Portman's attention the entire film. And just the way they do it is so bad. You see Thor and the whole movie is like, ooh, I want my old hammer back so bad. And he's being sneaky about it. But then Stormbreaker comes around the corner. Oh, I love you too, buddy. Like that's something you see in a comedy movie made with your kids. But you're talking about an inanimate object.
Yeah.
An object.
I mean,
baby.
I did. Now that I remember, I did laugh a few times, like when Stormbreaker like popped up when he was looking at the hammer. That was funny, and that could have pulled off if it was just that part right there, and it was just like he looked at it. And it was just that part right there. That would have been funny because it could have just been like it doesn't have actual emotion to just appear at that time. And that would have been funny. But instead they keep going on and it actually didn't move the boat because of that. Like, that was stupid. And the whole time I was like, what the heck? These are literally inanimate objects. They can't think. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they have magic powers. And the thing with Jane made sense when he was talking about protect her. That made sense. But the whole thing with like being jealous of one another, that was so stupid.
That's so dumb.
So stupid. I agree.
And that seemed to be like one of the main comedic focuses of the movie. Oh, dude, it made me so mad, man, watching it. I know, dude, no one in my theater really appreciated that. But that was another con I had.
Right. All right, next up with my next con, I have to say this, and it's horrible for me to say this, but basically and essentially, they took all the comic source material, they read it, they looked over it, and then they burned it. That's what they did in this movie, and that's my con. Like, the whole thing with the Jane Cancer storyline, such a good comic and such a good storyline, and then they made it a joke. The whole thing with Gore, and of course they have the Venom symbiote, he looks different, and he's, more effective, and he's out killing all these gods, and it's showing it and doing these things really super effective. It literally, like, they picked up those two storylines and tossed them in the fire is what Taika Waititi did. And that's awful to say something about a comic book movie.
Yeah.
It felt like a parody. It felt like,
like a parody.
It was just absolutely horrendous to think about because of the fact that they took that material and just like tossed it in the trash. Yeah. That's what stinks.
Looking back at like Thor 1, dude, that feels so like comic accurate. Like it did then, but like now, like even more so.
Right. I mean, this made me appreciate the first Thor movie more.
Because you're like, that's who he is, I feel like.
Exactly. Like, I think Thor 1 is super underrated. Like, I enjoy Thor 1, and this made me like it more.
Yeah, I'm like, this is a great movie.
I know, now, compared to this, golly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Another big issue I had with the movie was the CGI. You'll see in some certain scenes that Korg looks kind of like gray. In other scenes, he looks blue. That's obviously, like, I think it's pretty inconsistent. Another thing, I hated the costumes. I feel like the costumes, especially Jane and Thor's and Zeus's, looked they made out plastic and just really cheesy.
I liked Jane's suit. I didn't like her helmet, but I liked her suit. And then I liked Thor's blue and gold suit. I really actually did like
I wasn't feeling it as much. And then his
I didn't like the helmet. The helmet was stupid.
That felt really cheesy too. But the thing I hated most of that CGI, it just felt like everything was on a green screen. Yeah. Like, as you're going along, it just felt like you could literally just see the characters, like, standing there, and then you knew for a fact that everything else was being edited.
Yeah. I had the CGI as a con.
It didn't feel grounded or realistic. Like, we've seen what good CGI will do and how it can make it seem, appealing and realistic. This didn't at all. You could clearly see, like, dude, they're just standing there, man. And that sucked.
Right. As my next con, I just want to reiterate, I've talked about it a little bit more, but I just have to reiterate it because it is huge, is the wasted potential for both Gore and Jane, because both could have been really well done. Gore, of course, again, I just have to highlight because of how disappointed I was, the fact that we didn't see him kill more people, we didn't see him do more damage, we didn't see him have as much stakes as we liked, and then Jane, of course, not having as much pain with the cancer, not showing that, and showing the mighty Thor that she needs that now, that new identity. It's just I have to reiterate that because of how disappointed I was with that. Yeah. And just a small little reiteration there.
We talked about Zeus before, but I think this film really wasted an opportunity to bring in other gods. Like, there's a lot more gods in mythology than just Zeus. And even if you just brought them in for Gore to kill them, that would have been cool. But this was really the perfect time to introduce historical, mythological figures. And instead we get a dumpling god,
I'm
Are
laughing
you
at the
kidding
movie.
me?
I'm laughing at the
We
movie.
can have like Artemis or
So
like
stupid.
Ares.
I saw
or
the
something.
dumpling and I was like, what?
Of all like the cool gods like in mythology you could have like dreamed of, you're gonna put a dumpling
We could've
god
seen-
and then Kor's
We
god.
could have seen, something that would have been a cool, a flashback to like Moon Knight. We could have seen like a little Khonshu cameo.
Yeah,
How cool would that have
something
been?
like that. It's really clear that Taika did not really collaborate or discuss any of this with the Moon Knight showrunners or nothing because, bro, they literally had a place just for gods, and they show Zeus and then a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah.
Like,
A dumpling god. Are you kidding me?
yeah, like no, that's a dumpling god, man.
It was literally like cartoon.
Yes.
I was like, what is this movie, man?
Holy, bro.
What is this movie?
That's so much wasted potential
Yeah,
right there,
I
just
agree.
for that scene. But-
Next up, again, is another reiteration because of how horrible this part of the movie was. In the kids scene with the powers of Thor, oh, so horrible. It's just another con that just made me so mad, so dumb.
That really felt just like a Disney Plus show where you have like the bully and his friends team up in the schoolyard with the characters getting bullied and they just go at each other and the good kids win, but no one gets hurt. But it's not believable because they're like 5 years old.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's
What?
like they were trying to make this a family movie when it's a PG-13 film anyway.
Yeah.
You need to make it for like teens and up. Like
Yeah.
that's what it's for.
Yeah, for its credit, I really do like the way that like the monsters like were killed. Like you see like Jane throw out her hammer and like they get explored from the inside. Like it was cool with them, obviously, because there's no blood and the way they died in the CGI and the monsters was cool. But the kids fighting, man, that made no sense.
No sense at all.
No sense, dude.
And it was so depressing.
Holy, bro. And another comment I had was there's just one storyline in this film. Like it never jumps like to another thing. We never jump and see Gore and what he's doing, really. We have a terrible kid storyline, which I don't really even consider, and then just Thor and his friends the entire time. Like a lot of really good movies, you'll have multiple aspects. You have multiple things going on with your different side characters. This movie, all your characters are lumped into one story. So it's very linear. And it sucks. So there's nothing to look forward to.
Exactly.
So it's like, there's nothing.
And there's nothing. Yeah. All right. This con I have here is my final con that I have written because you reiterated most of the cons I already had, and that being the end. I did not like the end of this movie at all, to be honest, at all. I mean, you didn't get the feel of the characters. You didn't get that. You have Thor as this new single dad who's still throwing jokes out there like it's nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, I went from thinking that Thor would be an awesome dad to thinking like he's going to be an idiot dad. Like, it's so stupid. And then seeing love and that relationship and how the title was named after them in the beginning, like I hated
That's
that.
a terrible decision.
Them going to fight with each other, that's just stupid. She has power. She has anger issues. I did not like that end at all. I remember leaving the theater thinking like that end was horrible. And even during the end credits, just thinking like, man, they could have done so much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
I completely agree. The whole love storyline was extremely short. It didn't deserve the title in the movie. And it was completely uninteresting.
Watch in Thor 5 when they explore it. They're like, well, actually, Thor is love and she's thunder. That's something they would do.
He loses his thunder powers, so then he becomes a regular human again.
Yeah.
He learns how to survive.
That's something they would do. Golly.
Taika, you better not, dude.
Don't do it. Don't
You
make it
better
stupid.
not.
Please.
You better not. For my last pro, it's just a couple lumped in, and there's just a lot of inconsistencies in there. Like Thor gets shattered by the most powerful god, and it never explains how he gets his body back.
Yeah.
Like builds it back completely, and then some inconsistencies with Gore's character. We mentioned this briefly before, but according to the movie, Gore is doing everything he's doing, murdering gods out of love. He missed his daughter. He wanted to take revenge on those who represent them, the gods that killed her. So it just doesn't make sense to me that to lure the gods, he would put all these kids in a really dangerous position and just purposely intimidate, belittle and scare them. Like that doesn't make sense. Like I know the Necro Sword is evil, but it doesn't, I feel like, make you evil. I think it just kind of amplifies who you are, your inner desires.
Right.
But I'm sure he would have saw his daughter and some of those kids,
Right.
You know, but the whole trapping, the kidnapping kids, dude, that's not nowhere in the comics neither.
No.
Gore is solely focused on slaughtering gods for his daughter's name. So the whole him kidnapping them, I hated, and then the whole Thor teleportation thing and talking to them was just really dumb, and we should have seen that in way more movies if that was actually real. So that was just a bummer.
Yeah, I agree. All right, now we got to go into our next segment, which is talking about the end credit scenes. We'll break them down for you guys and talk about them a little bit more. So first, we got to talk about the mid credit scene. Now, this scene I actually did enjoy. It was nice to finish on a little bit of a highlight. So that was nice too. And that being, of course, we see Zeus is still alive. I didn't like that part because I think it would have been more impactful if instead of Zeus being alive, he would have been dead. But it would have been cooler, of course, if he's killed by Gore.
And then that character we see takes his place.
Right. Exactly. That would have been cooler. And then, of course, we see Hercules. And Hercules, I was hyped. I was like, yes.
Yeah. We all knew he was coming. We see Zeus, we're like, dude, it's Hercules.
It's Hercules.
What we really wanted was Henry Cavill.
We did.
Cavill.
But
Cavill.
I'm okay, with that. He can be utilized as the
Goldstein or something like that.
Yeah. So he looks comic accurate, which is cool.
Yeah, he looked good.
He did. He looks great, and I'm excited to see that as a future, plot as Hercules maybe going after Thor in Thor 5, and then of course inevitably having to team up to go against a greater villain because Hercules is the bad guy. So
that's like your typical, superhero storyline. You see it in Hawkeye. Good guy goes after good guy who thinks they're a bad guy, but then they realize they're both good guys, and they go after the real bad guy.
But I think it would work if they do it well here. And I do like Hercules as a character, and it'd be really cool to see him in the MCU. So I'm excited for that, and I'm glad it ended on the good note. I just think Zeus should be dead.
Yeah, I definitely think they should have swapped also these two end credit scenes. Like you said, the whole Zeus part wasn't cool. But I really feel like it wasn't a huge reveal, though, for the future of the MCU.
Right.
I feel like overall, these combined credit scenes just weren't too well done.
Right. All right, next up, we have to talk about the second end credit scene, and that being one that surprised me, super surprised me, and that being Jane arriving in Valhalla greeted by Heimdall. I was like, at first I was confused. What'd you think?
Well, first of all, for the record, I still don't like this end credit scene. I don't see what it accomplishes. I don't see what it means for the future of the MCU. I don't see how it deserves. I think this would have been probably better fit at just the very end of the movie, not even as an end credit scene. Like so what? It's cool to see Elba as Heimdall again, but yes, we know she died. All right, so she went to the Asgardian, resting place.
And that's another thing that's inconsistent.
What does that mean?
That blows my mind. So essentially, the MCU is saying that whatever you believe in is where you go to the afterlife. Because if we see Moon Knight, and then now we see here Valhalla. So I'm like, okay, so whatever you believe in is where you go.
That's your afterlife. Like in Black Panther too.
Yeah, Black Panther, you go to the ancestral plane. So I guess that's an interesting concept for the MCU. I mean, I don't have too big of an issue with that. Yeah. It's just I'm confused of what that means for the future of Heimdall and Jane itself. Are they really dead? Are we going to see him again, or is it just a reveal that she went to Valhalla?
I don't know.
Because like in the comics, instead of dying, she becomes another Valkyrie. Jane after this, so potentially maybe she comes back as a Valkyrie and trains and stuff and becomes Valkyrie, which might be cool, but still, it's just like.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
But I definitely do think she has a future in the MCU, or else they wouldn't have shown that end credit scene.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have shown it just
Heimdall
to
as well,
show that she's
right?
there. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think Heimdall's done, but like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if either one, we see her, work her way out of that place back to Earth, or two, we see her become like a Valkyrie or position in that realm.
Right.
So regardless, I think she'll come back for another movie or so. With Chris Hemsworth.
See. Which it just was super confusing and weird
and
an odd credit scene.
Definitely didn't deserve to be the last one, in my opinion.
Right. All right, let's move on. And then, of course, we see at the very end the Thor will return sign. So now we got to go to a part of our podcast where we go into theories about when Thor will return, what are we going to get, Thor 5, what are we going to talk about? So let's talk about that. So I'll start us off. So I do think we're getting a Thor 5.
Yeah,
and
for sure we're getting Thor 5.
And my prediction with that is it's going to be predominantly about Hercules going after him for his death, but there's going to be an overarching villain that comes in. I think it'd be cool theory-wise, is going in theories territory. I think it'd be cool if we see Enchantress as the villain. Ooh. Because she is a super big part of Thor's storyline.
Yeah, she's a huge
and she's a cool villain. She's a cool character. Yeah. So I would like to see her as the villain of the movie, and then add a little addition of another character in Beta Ray Bill that we haven't seen in the MCU yet.
Ooh.
I think that'd be cool. I just feel like that would be an awesome movie. but they could overrun it with comedy and it'd be horrible. So we'll see.
And I think even if they decide to do the Chantress storyline, obviously they don't have it that planned out. But maybe instead of Zeus, being alive and commissioning him to go do it, having Zeus be dead, then her.
It was her. That was, dude, that would be awesome.
Mess with his mind.
That would
go
be
after.
awesome.
Thor helps, get in his right mind. They go after her. Like we've seen that time and time again. In the comics and the animated TV shows, Enchantress taking people's mind and controlling them.
And
that would be cool.
And some background for Enchantress, to those of you guys who don't know about Enchantress from the cartoons or comic books or whatever. Enchantress is actually a really cool character. She's part of the Masters of Evil in the comics and stuff, works with Zemo a lot. Anyway, with Thor and Asgard, she's an Asgardian witch similar to Loki, but she's in love with Thor, and Thor does not like her back. Of course, doesn't return that love. And then, of course, eventually, instead of loving him, she wants to chase after him and kill him. So
you don't love me back? Guess you gotta die.
You're gonna die. So she's actually pretty cool,
baby.
And I think she would work as a villain of a next Thor movie.
That'd be cool. Like you said, if the main villain turned out to be Hercules, I'd be very mad. Obviously,
because he shouldn't be.
He's a good guy. Oh, dude, seeing Beta Ray Bill come in and Enchantress, that'd be perfect.
And then seeing him get Stormbreaker, and then of course Thor finally get Mjolnir back. I think that'd be cool.
I think it'd be cool. That sounds 100 times better because we gotta talk about what Taika said. Right. As y'all seen a couple of days ago, he said he would come back to do Thor 5 if Hemsworth does it, and he's thinking like a really
and Hemsworth definitely is coming back. So.
Yeah, he like I said, he wants to break that Jackman record. So apparently, oh Lord have mercy, Taika wants to do the movie about him with Star-Lord on a road trip.
Which I really hope he was kidding,
dude. I don't think he is. It would be hilarious, but it just wouldn't fit. That would be just like a spin-off, even more so an animated spin-off. Yeah. But if you ask me, dude, I don't want to see Taika direct.
I'd much rather see that movie. Yeah,
I want to see them pull. I feel like Taika's had his chance. I don't really want to see him have
My only thing is what he did with Ragnarok, though. I mean, he did a really good job with Ragnarok. So, my thing is, though, is
he had everything in place, too. I think the circumstances would be totally different. Like, he was using this comedy, like, as, to deal with these emotions. But we've kind of, settled on him. So, I don't know how it would fit into that. I really feel like a more grounded approach to Thor would be better for Beta Ray Bill being that example to him and finding Enchantress.
That'd be cool.
I don't know.
I think that'd be cool.
I feel like I hope I'm not a jerk for saying I don't want Taika for the 5th, but just seeing this movie, man, it really just turned me off to.
And I get it. I get it for sure. I do understand. All right. So, did you have any other theories for Thor 5 and the possibilities of what could happen?
That's about all. I definitely want to see more of Jane. I think they could definitely throw that in as a cool subplot.
Yeah.
Her just figuring life out there, maybe finding some way to help Thor from beyond.
Or maybe realizing that she needs to come back as Valkyrie or something.
Yeah, I don't know how they would do that. I know, is it Hercules in mythology that descends into hell to get the 3-headed dog? Is that him? Maybe it's not.
I don't know.
Maybe, but maybe I don't know. We'll see, but I don't know how they'll write it. But I think, that's a great theory, man. I hope it happens.
We'll see. So do you think any other, what do we think? We know Chris Hemsworth is willing to do more. So where do you think else besides Thor 5 would we see Thor?
That's a great.
I'm thinking maybe Avengers 5, but I don't know where else he'd fit.
That'd be weird. We don't even know, first of all, who the Avengers team would make up.
Right.
We've seen so many additions: Eternals, Shang-Chi,
as of yet,
Yelena. We don't know entirely who would fit in there. Obviously, he still has his place as the original. It'd be cool to see him take on a more mentor approach, maybe seeing him, on the front lines and Doctor Strange doing the planning and all the mystical stuff. That would be cool to show the young guns like Spider-Man.
Right.
But I don't know. It might feel kind of weird with this whole new wave.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it if he wants to return, unless he just keeps doing unwanted, unconnected Thor films.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No, we do not.
Please.
We don't need that. All right, now it's time for what some of you might have been waiting for. Hopefully you're still here, unless you love the movie. We're sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, we've just been bashing it.
Time for the rating. So Nathan, would you like to hit us with your rating of Thor Love and Thunder?
Should we talk about where we put it too with the other Marvel movies, or include it?
Let's rate it and then talk about where we put it with other Marvel movies.
Holy, all right. Wow. So if you've listened this far, you obviously know how we feel,
right?
And I can honestly say that this will be the lowest rating I've ever given a Marvel movie. I usually rate low to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of the theater, I thought better of it than I did now, just
Mhm.
because I really couldn't believe what I had just seen.
Right.
So initially I was gonna give it a 5
Oh,
coming
wow.
out of the theater, but
Wow.
after thinking about just how atrocious this movie is, holy, I feel bad for saying this, but I shouldn't because I didn't make the movie. I'm
Mhm.
gonna settle with a 3.5.
Mm.
I'm going 3.5. I don't think, dude, a 3 would be terrible. Like
Yeah.
this movie, it still has some cool elements, some
Yeah.
good characters, some bright visuals, some
Yeah.
cool looking stuff, but everything else doesn't work. So I think a 3.5
Mhm.
is what I'm going with here.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that for sure. So actually, you may be surprised. Okay, so when I watched this movie initially, I came out of the theater thinking, "Wow, that's crazy." So I was not going to give it a 5. I was always lower than a 5 anyway. I initially was going to give it a 3.5. That was my initial thought.
All right.
And I was like, on the fence of a 3.5 or a 4. And I was like, I don't know exactly how I want to do it, 3.5 or 4. And then while doing this podcast, it changed. And then it changed back. And then, it kind of reminds me. So I'm going to settle and just give it a 4. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
4? All right.
Initially, I thought about giving it a 3.5. And then I think of gore. And then I'm like, okay, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Jane scenes. I enjoyed, some of them aspects. And, some of the comedy worked. Some of it, most of it didn't.
Yeah.
But, some of the, I think of that and I'm like, okay, I'll settle with a 4. 4 is still pretty bad. And I will say this is the lowest I've rated an MCU film in general. So, on this podcast anyway, besides, what we've done on this podcast. So I'm going to give it a 4. And, it's regrettably to say because I was expecting to give this movie at least, I was honestly expecting, initially to give it an 8 out of 10 is what I was
like
going to
7
expect.
or 8 is what
I was going to expect. But now that it's a 4, I'm like in shock about it.
It feels weird to say it.
It feels
Like,
really weird.
it
Giving
really
a Thor
does.
Love and Thunder film a 4.
It's weird too because like Gore is like pretty much all 4 points.
Yeah, he is. Yes, maybe a 0.5 for Jane, but
0.5 maybe.
maybe. But
Maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, I know.
Holy.
How crazy is that? All right. So amongst the other MCU movies, I'll give us that first.
All right.
So there's 29 total MCU movies. I'm putting it 29.
Wow.
I'm putting it 29.
Wow.
That's how shocking. Going out of the theater, I was like kind of think of other movies that I compare it to in the MCU. I was like Black Widow. I enjoyed Black Widow better. I was thinking
Yep.
Iron Man 2. I like Iron Man 2 better. Iron Man 3. I like
Iron
it
Man
better.
3.
Then I go down to my bottom 2, and that being Dark World and Incredible Hulk. And I was like, honestly, I might have to revisit both of them. I might have to revisit them. So
Yeah.
it could be interchangeable with those 3. I don't know yet exactly. But at this point in my mind currently that I'm thinking about it, I think I like both movies, Incredible Hulk and Dark World, better.
Wow.
If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I think it's 29 for me.
29.
It is. I think it's
Wow.
29th because I gave Dark World in my mind, I give it a 5 out of 10. And then I gave Incredible Hulk a 4 out of 10. So it's kind of equal with this, but at the same time, like it's still worse. So I think it's 29 at this point, which is shocking.
I respect it. I respect it.
Mhm.
Like I said, there's 29 in total. When
Yeah.
when I think, at least in my opinion, about maybe what
Don't hate me, but
No, don't worry. I don't. I know
those
we
people
differ
out there listening
sometimes.
might, but
I think of, in my opinion, the 3 worst Marvel movies. I think Incredible Hulk is up there.
Mhm.
I think The Dark World. Then I
Yeah.
think either you can make a case for Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Yeah.
Iron Man 3, maybe Iron Man 2. But I feel like those movies are kind of lumped together. I
Yeah.
feel like it's more loose for the third. And as I think over it, dude, I'm starting to realize that, holy, those movies were better.
yeah.
And that's weird to say because I've
Yeah.
never been a big Dark World fan, even though I've watched it like actually probably the second most after the first Avenger because we
Mhm.
had it on DVD when I was a kid. So I think I might have to agree with you
Mm.
and put it at the bottom
It's crazy to
of the
say.
bucket.
Oh,
Put it
that's
at-
so crazy to
at
say. It
29,
hurts.
Like everything in front of it is just better.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion, and it truly saddens me because we see, TikTokers, a lot of my friends, they've been texting me like, yo, I've seen it once, I've seen it twice now, and I've liked it better. I'd give it a 7 and 8. And
I
that
mean,
hurts me,
Who
man.
knows? I mean, I could go and
But-
see it again and then be like, okay, maybe it's better than I remembered it.
Yeah,
because the
but-
whole time I was thinking in my mind I didn't like it. So that may have influenced a little bit. So who knows? I could like it better the second time I see it. I probably will watch it the second time. But as of right now, I just don't.
Yeah, so I think
So my opinion could change again. It's recency bias. So
Yeah.
don't judge us too hard for recency bias.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't enjoy this movie doesn't mean we might not like it a little bit better the next time. Who knows? The next time we talk about it, we could like it better than Dark World and Incredible Hulk or something like that.
Facts.
But the
Right
fact
now.
still remains that it will always be on the lower end of the MCU.
Yeah.
That still remains.
I know, and I really don't think rewatching it is going to change much.
I mean, it could. I don't know. Rewatch hasn't changed a lot about my opinions, for
Yeah,
certain
in the
movies. So
past.
we'll see what happens. But
All-
yeah, that's
All I
crazy
know
to
is
say.
one more than my buddy, he said, "Wow, you even think it's worse than Captain Marvel?" I was like, "Dude, Captain Marvel's like freaking Shawshank Redemption compared to this movie, man." I was like, "Dude, that bitch goaded." He's like, "Nah,
Compared to this,
yeah,
yeah.
compared
Captain
to
Marvel has a
this-
better plot than this.
Yes, bro, the characters are more compelling.
Holy
Listen,
cow,
I'm
that's
sorry.
funny.
We'll get all you haters on the pod one day, and we won't team up on you, but it'll be hard to hold you ground.
I mean, you can't lie. We have a compelling argument though.
Yeah.
For those of you listening,
We just gave you an hour and 15 minutes of why the
Exactly.
movie's not good.
I know exactly. So
Not really repeating.
who knows?
so-
We may change your opinion. You may hate us. I don't
so
know.
we're
We
both
still love
coming
you.
At you. Bottom of the list.
Mm.
We're in consensus.
Yes, we are.
Consensus.
We are. And if we both
Consensus.
agree, and me being an optimist and then you being a realist, it's it's gonna happen like that, and it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. If we both
I
agree,
know.
then it's
Well, see,
more than
that's
likely
the
not.
thing. Another thing, really quick, is that when I got to the theater, I was worried that you were gonna like it.
Yeah.
Because normally you do like things more than I do. You
Right.
see it in a more brighter light.
Right.
And when you told me that's the worst MC movie I've seen, dude, I almost peed my pants with joy, bro. I was like, dude, I'm not crazy. I'm not
Yeah.
just being an overly
Right.
pessimistic person
Right.
like my boy
So
Michael.
my
didn't
prediction
like
is
it.
because of this recency bias, I'm thinking in probably like a couple months, people are going to think Thor's horrible. This movie's horrible, if I'm being honest.
Really?
If me and you both agree on this and we're both like have that different set of mind, I think that's what's going to happen.
We'll see everything else be better and like,
Mm.
oh, you know what? It sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but that's what I'm saying for now.
Alrighty, guys. That was a banger. That was a long one. And we appreciate y'all listening through it.
A little bit longer than anticipated, but that's okay.
But hey, we'll take it. So if you enjoyed this episode, man, and women, if you enjoy what we bring to you, let us know. Give us a review and a download on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It really
Yes.
means a lot. It helps put our podcast out there for other people to listen. We just want to say we freaking appreciate y'all, and we love y'all. As for our announcements, our Miss Marvel finale is coming out this Thursday.
Yes, sir.
This Thursday at 5 a.m. So stay tuned. The show's kind of been a letdown, not gonna lie. So we hope it can end on somewhat of a redeemable note. So stay tuned for that Thursday morning. After that, we don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But we'll let y'all know.
We will for sure let y'all know, but we just want to thank y'all for listening. Don't hate us. We love you 3000.